Welcome to the Technology Pulse podcast, hosted by DALY Computers, providing comprehensive technology solutions to the public and private sectors for more than 35 years. Visit www.daily.com to learn more. Today's episode is brought to you by Panasonic TOUGHBOOK, rugged devices trusted by hardworking people in the toughest environments anywhere. And now here's your host, Rick from DALY.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse podcast, we have Adam Waxman. Adam is one of the territory account managers for the public sector for Panasonic Connect of North America, and Adam covers several of the Northeast states. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rick. It's a pleasure.
And it's a pleasure on our end as well. So, Adam, let's have you talk a little bit about what you do with Panasonic.
Sure thing. So what I do is I represent our brand for mobility. I present our products and our solutions to public sector. So that would encompass police, fire, EMS, some folks in education, and some other areas predominantly associated with public safety.
And how long have you been with Panasonic?
I have officially been with Panasonic about 2.5 years. I was a reseller, much like your company. Prior to that, for 3 years. So going about 5.5 years total of selling Panasonic products.
Now, I have to think that over the past 5.5 years, the public safety landscape has definitely changed. Have you seen that?
Absolutely. So we have, of course, contracting budgets. There was the defund the police movement. So budgets being shrunken has been quite irritating to everybody, both from the vendor side, the end user side, and most people in between. And I think even the folks on the street that are looking for public safety to protect them, when they can't respond as quickly or they can't address a crime at the same capacity they once did, then they're being affected as well. So it's a very cyclical thing that affects everybody in the cycle.
And then with that said, I mean, obviously public safety has its own unique set of challenges. And I have to think that that unique set of challenges goes all the way from the work that they do and the type of things that they see or type of things they respond to or prevent, right down to the technology that they use. So with your experience in public safety, why is it that technology and devices need to be different for public safety organizations? Are they used differently? Are they in different use cases?
Great question, and absolutely they are. So there are consumer grade electronics and there are public safety grade electronics. What are some of the differences between consumers and public safety? Crime never sleeps, and so therefore, not only crime, but crime and fire and issues that require public safety's intervention never stops. It's a 24/7 issue. So those industries are active 24/7 as well, and therefore their equipment needs to be as well. If you are using something that is a consumer grade, the typical consumer uses their device anywhere between 6 and 13 hours a day versus public safety and public sector that use a hot item. So it's constantly being used beyond shift to shift to shift and has to stay consistently charged and processing and doing all the things it's intended to do throughout the entire 3 shifts. So that being the case, if you were to take a consumer grade device and try to force it to be used 24/7, you can get things like battery bulging, right up to and not limited to a fire. So it's really important that when you are talking about devices for public sector, that you consider all those things and that you use devices that are designed specifically for public sector and not adapted to the public sector from a consumer device, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I could really see that. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't realize that these devices are constantly on, like you said, from shift to shift to shift. So it's not like they get a whole lot of downtime. You know, they take a look at the devices. You know, obviously one of the things that Panasonic provides that has been very popular among DALY customers has been the TOUGHBOOK. And, we see those installed in patrol cars for police officers, for example. Those patrol cars don't sit. They are running constantly. They're if they go back to headquarters, maybe they get, cleaned out for a minute and then they're right back out on the road. And so that device just has to keep on running.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, consumer grade devices are intended to be used, run their charge down, plugged in and left to charge, perhaps overnight. So the processes and the apps running in the background, if they are running constant, it really doesn't have the ability to charge itself to an adequate level to be used in the proper setting for public safety. Whereas the Panasonic devices are definitely dedicated to public safety and intended for that use. So much so that we have a law enforcement advisory council, which is comprised of folks from about 24 different agencies across the U.S. They meet quarterly and they help us with the development and the R&D that goes into our devices and the development thereof. So they help us quite a bit to develop it and utilize it for folks that are truly in the trenches and know how it has to operate.
So that leads me to my next question, because I'm sure you've heard a lot of different stories about how these devices are used. So can you give us a couple of examples of how these rugged computers or rugged mobile devices, how they're used in the field by the different public safety agencies?
Sure. So why don't we go across a couple different industries specifically or segments. So the police, of course, use it constantly. It's in their cruisers. They are doing lookups prior to walking up on a vehicle that's been pulled over. They can receive bolos or any type of warnings that need to be given out to the field without perhaps getting it over the air through the radio and getting it audibly. They're able to see information come across real time through text. They do driver's license lookups. They can issue e-tickets through our devices in many cases. So those devices are very integral to their job. And if they don't perform properly when you are pulling over someone that perhaps you're pulling them over for going 57 and a 55, and truly they are someone that is wanted for a bank robbery, and you don't get that information that they're this person that's wanted in a bank robbery, you walk up on that suspect and they get nervous and they decide to shoot an officer before they ever had a chance to ask for the ID and insurance and registration. That is a life-saving moment. So that's why the devices need to work when they have to work. And that would not be a good time to have a device run dead or have a bulging battery, disconnect, or say, can't perform any processes until we cool down or anything of that nature. So that's kind of the police perspective. From the fire perspective, they also utilize those real time and actively in their vehicles. They use it for finding streets, finding hydrants, status messaging, letting the dispatch know that they are on scene or how far they are from scene. Additionally, it utilizes the GPS information within our devices to let dispatch know exactly where they are and which of the apparatus is most optimum to be utilized for that particular incident. EMS, they use it, of course, for EPCR, which stands for Electronic Patient Care Recording, if I remember correctly. And what that enables them to do is take a person that's ill or in need of their services, scan their ID in some cases through our devices, and get that information much quicker populated into their CAD or RMS, records management keeping software. And they are able to see sometimes right down to whether there are any medical warnings on that person, if they are allergic to certain things, if they are a known diabetic, things of that nature. Additionally, the medical insurance can start populating oftentimes right at that immediate scan, so that it's a lot of time saving. They are also able to get information over to hospitals prior to arriving on scene at the hospital to hand the patient off. So the doctors can already start to preliminarily figure out what type of medical process they're going to do once the patient arrives.
Wow. And it's amazing that these devices can have so many different uses for these different types of agencies. Now, I have to think also with, again, all of the experience that you have in this area, that you've heard some pretty interesting stories about some of the more challenging environments that these devices have had to go through. Can you share any of those?
Sure. So one thing that has always resonated with me when someone asks a similar question is we have some devices that I've been shown at shows. We have a device at our headquarters that have been the recipients of bullets, actually. I can't say that they stopped the bullet from killing an officer or anything of that nature, but they showed us after shootouts, the devices have been shot in some cases. And still, oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, because they are superior devices, they still perform after the bullet was in the screen of the device, sometimes in the chassis of the device as well. So, of course, like anything else, we can't say it's bulletproof, but it sustained a bullet. So it's kind of an interesting story. They are truly rugged devices, and they're built to do that type of service day in and day out. Additionally, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we have incorporated in the last several years modularity to our devices. So that's pretty interesting in that we're one of the only groups in the industry that do this, to my knowledge. And what we do is, even after the point of sale, if you decide at the time of sale you have a certain use that you're going to buy the device for, and then either the technology changes, perhaps legislation changes, or your standard operating procedures change, and now you need to add a barcode reader, let's say, or a thermal temperature sensor in the device scanner. That can be added after device with something what we call expansion packs. We actually coined the phrase X-Pack. So you can adapt that in the field, either with or without IT, depending on what your standard operating procedures allow. And it allows the device to have other uses other than what it originally was intended for. And it can be adapted on the fly. So if you were to have something, say, one day used in a cruiser, and then you decide you're going to use it on a Sunday basketball game by a special resource officer in a school for checking people's IDs that are coming in to make sure no one's a felon or everybody that should be there, that is there, should be there, they can put a scanner to check barcodes. And then Monday morning, they could put it right back out in the cruiser by taking the barcode out if they didn't. So it gives major versatility.
Now, that really leads me to another point, because obviously these rugged devices, like you said, big difference between rugged device and consumer grade device. And sometimes that obviously has to do with price. Learning that you can expand the system out and you can evolve the system with, as you said, the term you used was X-Packs.
Right.
Knowing that you could do that, what is the typical lifetime? What's the life cycle for these type of devices? How many years can these agencies expect to get out of these devices? Because I do know that, especially when it comes to the consumer grade devices, 2-3 years down the road, your device is ancient and doesn't really run what you need it to run anymore.
You're exactly right. And typically, if we speak to someone that either has only used pen and paper or they've only used consumer devices, they expect a 2 to 3 year refresh cycle. When we speak to them, we can very easily show them why we consider our devices to go much beyond that, because we have a 5-year warranty that we offer, up to a 5-year warranty. There's a standard warranty of 3 years, and we will go up to 5 years. And that's very comprehensive, our warranty. So we obviously believe in our product enough to put that on there. Clearly, it will do what it is intended to do for that period of time. We do find that folks, my personal opinion and what I've found out there is that folks get even beyond that 5-year period. I've seen as much as 10 years and beyond. Typically, I see about 7 years where they start to want to do a refresh, even if they're out of warranty. And the reason being is generally not because of any failure of the hardware. There's some software limitations. And with new software, sometimes you need a faster processor, or sometimes even with what they call CGIS compliance, it requires a higher level of Windows if you're using a Windows platform. So that could dictate moving up to a different model of computer as well.
But still, 7 years. I mean, that to me, that seems like it well outlasts what you're going to see, particularly in those different types of conditions. Because again, you're out there not to steal from the old poem about the postal service, but neither rain nor snow nor dark of night. I mean,
That's right. That's right. And in addition to that, if I could just add this too, sustainability wise, you're spending a fair amount of money for our devices and perhaps a little more than some of the competitors. But if you're getting almost double the life out of it, and if you do need to shift to something else after 5 to 7 years, you can take that device and you could change some of the X packs and then push it into a different line of service. You could give it to DPW or fire or EMS, if say from police. So it has multiple lives that it can have with our devices versus a competitive product. A lot of agencies that say have different legal aspects to their day-to-day workings and dealings. Sometimes they get a little eerie feeling about giving a computer to a different agency because of the potential for someone to have personal or private information of different individuals that have had cases or whatnot, victims, things of that nature. Because of the expansion packs and the ease of taking out a hard drive, taking out memory from our devices, you can really adapt it and make it almost new again as far as the memory and the hard drive goes, to pass it along with great confidence that you're not passing along any secrets or information that shouldn't be shared. And additionally, it keeps devices out of the landfill in a bigger order than, say, our competitors, because if you're going 2 to 3 years and then you literally are throwing them in landfills and perhaps disposing of them properly or improperly, you're still disposing of things, and it's a tax to the environment. With our devices, if you can get 40 to 60% more life out of it, you're minimizing the amount of filling of a landfill and recycling that takes place. So it's certainly has sustainability aspects that should be considered. Some additional things, our printed circuit boards, most of the time we are able to do board level repairs. Most other technical agencies, because A, it's very hard to train people to do board level repairs. B, it's very time consuming in most cases to do board level repairs. So most of the competitors out there will swap out boards rather than do repairs. What that does is it, again, increases landfill usage. And we've minimized that by doing board level repairs. That's something that it's a little tidbit of information, but I like throwing it out there.
No, and that's perfect because DALY is really committed to sustainability. We have our sustainability pledge right on our website, and that is definitely a big part of it. We are trying to do everything we can to keep these devices out of the landfills. And again, whether it's recycling the components, stripping out the precious metals from them, or even, like you said, you swap out what components you can and you put it to a different type of use. There are a lot of things that we can do. So that's something that's near and dear to our company.
Well, it's not just Earth Day where we have to consider the planet. It's a 12-month situation for us, and it's an ongoing thing. And if we don't take care of it today, the next generations will have a lot of garbage and a lot of toxic water and air, and so we really have to be cognizant of these things now.
No, and that's very true. There's an old saying, every day should be Earth Day.
Right.
And, I even find myself, heck, you sit there and you're about to just throw something in the trash. And I start to think, man, that landfill's going to fill up.
Right.
Is there something else I can do with this? Can I take these coffee grounds and put them out in the garden? Or, maybe I should rinse this container a little bit better so that I can actually put it into the recycle bin rather than the trash.
Absolutely. Well,
and you don't think about that.
Great consideration at Panasonic, very much so as well.
Yeah, you don't normally think about that when you think about devices, because for a lot of people, you take an old computer, you take an old device, an old mobile device, and you send it somewhere. And what they don't realize is that's true. A lot of these things just end up in landfills. And now
recycling, Rick, they will strip out the precious metals, but ultimately something is ending up in that landfill if you're not careful. And
right.
Likely that is how it goes down. You're right.
And I keep seeing these TV shows where they go and they dig up the old landfills and they're finding everything from old video game cartridges to, VHS tapes of a movie that completely bombed, and
Absolutely.
we're,
You know,
we're,
with,
we're
with our expansion packs also, if I could just touch back on that as well, a lot of agencies that say have different legal aspects to their day-to-day workings and dealings. Sometimes they get a little eerie feeling about giving a computer to a different agency because of the potential for someone to have personal or private information of different individuals that have had cases or whatnot, victims, things of that nature. Because of the expansion packs and the ease of taking out a hard drive, taking out memory from our devices, you can really adapt it and make it almost new again as far as the memory and the hard drive goes, to pass it along with great confidence that you're not passing along any secrets or information that shouldn't be shared.
Now, you talked before about the warranty, and now you're talking about that, about, taking out hard drives and taking out memory and replacing them, and so that devices can be put over to, from one agency to another. To me, that all sounds like it's part of that great support that we have heard from our daily customers that Panasonic offers when it comes to these rugged devices. Can you talk a little bit more about the other types of support services they offer?
Sure. In fact, in doing so, I'd like to start from the base foundation of it. We have a pro services group that is formerly known as Heartland. It's in Kansas. It is owned by Panasonic. It's not a third party. We don't send our equipment to an island in the Caribbean and then somewhere in Mexico the next week. It specifically goes to one spot that's owned by us, controlled by us, managed by us, and it handles everything from imaging to asset tagging to image development to repairs. We also do installations. We do IT management, on-site, off-site. We can even go right to having an on-site badged employee to help with your IT needs 24/7. So, well, that would be multiple badged employees, of course, but it's the kind of thing we can do as much or as little as you need. We can customize a program for the end user that is palatable for them, both with the way we do it and financially that is palatable for them as well. So we don't look to remove someone's IT department per se. In many cases, we augment what they have and help them. Many times they are overwhelmed with responsibilities that go well beyond the hours of the day that they have to provide towards IT services. So we can take and help them with some of these services. It's of great savings to them and great efficiency.
It sounds like it. And we have heard, particularly here on the podcast, we've talked to several people that have said the amazing thing about the IT department is the person who's running IT in a lot of these agencies is wearing so many different hats. It's either somebody who got the job through attrition, someone who, stepped up because somebody else is completely overworked, or, sometimes it's, this is a part-time employee that we want to make full-time, so we're going to make them IT support. And again, it's not the only thing that they focus on. So having that backup and having that support from an organization with a reputation is amazing and phenomenal as Panasonic, I would have to think would give a lot of peace of mind to a lot of these different agencies.
You're spot on. The funny thing is I have come across so many different agencies where I meet the so-called IT person, and the person's name is generally Lieutenant such and such or Sergeant such and such. And the question sometimes comes up, well, how did you get into IT? Well, I was the guy that knew the most about computers, so I really got thrust into this. Well, that's not necessarily like a life ambition that they have, but it's something that has to be done, which is very admirable. But if we can help those folks out, they're generally very, very happy to have us do so. At the very minimum, they are thrilled. So we look to do that on a regular basis.
And that's fantastic. Now, the one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because, we've talked about the public safety landscape and how it's changed. But the term public safety, that has evolved itself over the past several years, because it used to just be public safety was police, fire, EMS. And these were separate departments that were run through either the local or county or state government. And they're very separate. But now in the world we live in today, and I hate to use that term because of course it's the world we live in today, but the way things have changed lately, public safety has really expanded into other sectors. It's not just police department, it's not just fire department, and it's not just ambulance crews. It's really branched out elsewhere in the public sector.
You are right. Typically, anywhere that there is an assembly of people exposes itself to threat. So as a result, you have to have public safety in those situations, whether it's for physical security of people coming in or out, or from attacks from who knows what, terrorism, local terrorism. There's all different types of threats that have presented themselves. And I understand why you say this world we live in. Because it's the morphing world that we live in, and unfortunately, the change that we have seen over the years. You end up becoming desensitized when you turn on the news and you see 9 people shot last night. That was back in the day, that was unheard of, but that is a reality today. As a result, we have to take precautions, and we have to have people that are paid to keep other folks safe. And by doing so, they have to have the best equipment to do so. I made the reference before about the officer that gets out of the car and does a check and a lookup on the vehicle. If he doesn't know that that car is stolen, if he doesn't know that that person is wanted, and he comes up and he doesn't realize there's a threat for him, he may not go home to his family at the end of that day. That's something that we look to minimize. Same thing can happen with someone that comes into a place of assembly who hasn't had a background check, even if it's a cursory one through an ID. Many times people slip through the system that could have just shown a driver's license and would have picked up on the fact that they were a wanted individual. And yet if they get into that place of assembly, they could do a lot of damage before anybody could stop them. So what's 100 lives worth? What's 1 life worth? We don't want any loss. So it's incredibly important that we do have the proper tools for the job when they're needed and that they work with them.
And I also think about the educational setting as well. Everything from school resource officers in public school systems right up to campus security. I mean, a lot of colleges and universities nowadays, campus security used to be the person who, was the part-time JV football coach who,
right.
Would take an extra shift just to get an extra paycheck. But I mean, they really have to be trained. They have to have, the same type of dedication. And you would think they really need the same type of equipment that the police force would have.
In many cases, we're seeing sworn individuals in educational situations now, both at universities and even on a local level. So you're absolutely correct in that. So, again, barcode scanners, things of that nature, checking to make sure the proper people are in the proper places. They're going through all the same machinations that a municipal or state officer would go through on a campus as well. So you're absolutely correct.
So we've been talking a lot about the different rugged devices. And again, we've seen how these devices are used. We've seen how public safety professionals have really valued them. Is there anything you can tell us about what might be coming down the pike for the rugged devices? You talked about the fact that now you can add that functionality through the X-Packs. Is there anything that you're looking at for the future that, and again, I'm not asking you to give us any trade secrets, but any type of enhancements or evolution that you're looking at for these devices that some of these agencies can look forward to?
There's all kinds of very interesting things that we are doing R&D on currently, most of which I can't necessarily speak of at great length. We have looked into things from shot detection to facial recognition, things of that nature. At this point, I can't go into too much detail about that, but I can tell you there's things that we've come across that we are bringing to market that are pretty incredible. I mean, there's remote management software that we incorporate into a lot of our sales that allows you to, when someone comes back to the IT director and says, I don't understand it, I couldn't get my shift work done, I had my computer fail 8 different times, and you could tell that the person just pressed their power button and shut it off 8 different times. So sometimes people are trying to dodge work. It gives more feedback to the IT directors and to people that are responsible for the devices so that they aren't getting rid of devices that seem to have a ghost issue. So it gives you more intelligence and more feedback with this remote management software that we're able to sell. Additionally, we're working towards a perfected what we call core, which is an asset management system, which it gives you basically one pane of glass to look at to manage all your assets, not just our Panasonic assets. It could include cell phones, firearms, ammunition, all different types of things. So that's something that we've been in development with as well. And it's just real exciting. Remote battery monitoring as well. So we have a program that allows you to determine if the battery's life is only getting up to, say, 60% max after an ample charging time. We can actually be made aware of that and send a battery out automatically for, say, device 58 or car 58, however it's designated in the system. And you'll know without even having to go through any major analysis that 58's battery just came in. It had a problem on this date, and Panasonic already sent you a new battery for it. So it's pretty comprehensive.
Excellent. Hopefully, I didn't throw you off too much there with that. I know it was kind of a question that was off the list, but I always like to ask that question if if there are things that we can talk about.
Panasonic's a fairly open organization. We don't have a lot of secret squirrel stuff going on, but we obviously you're a business and you have to keep things close to the vest. But we're a very ethical organization, and that's why I came to work here. I think I told you that in previously speaking with you. I could have gone anywhere. I really looked very hard at different options, and I like working for an organization that takes care of issues properly. I mean, issues happen in any organization. The best government, best agencies, best business can have issues that occur. It's how you handle them that differentiates you from everybody else. And that's what I think is one of our leading edge pieces that drew me to the company. And I'm thrilled to be here as a result.
No, excellent. Excellent. All right, Adam, thanks so much for all the great information you shared. Obviously, if anybody's interested in learning more about these Panasonic rugged devices, all you have to do is contact us here at Daily. But Adam, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate everything, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Rick, I appreciate it. I'm on LinkedIn, Adam Waxman with Panasonic. And if anybody has questions or just needs some advice on computers, let us know.
Thank you for listening to the Technology Pulse podcast produced by Daily. Before we go, we would like to remind you of a few legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily or its leadership. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide legal, financial, or other professional advice. The content of this podcast is protected by copyright laws and may not be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted without the written permission of Daily Computers Inc. Any products, services, or other references mentioned in this podcast are for informational purposes only and do not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Daily. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at marketing@daily.com.